This program is made possible by a grant from Puget Sound Bank and by viewers like you.
Hey ho, I know that you're watching the back of my head, and this isn't really usually done on television, but that's because this evening is about what happens in here. It's about creativity and imagination and dreams and personal history. It's also about one of those special times that happens when you have a lot of people over dinner and you step back and sit in the chairs in the living room, and something magic happens once in a while. You don't just make small talk. Something special. People start telling stories. People start laughing. People start singing songs. And all of a sudden, you don't want to go home. You hope that life like this would go on forever. And we hope that it's this kind of evening. We've tried to make this Fulghum's after dinner in some ways. We've got furniture of mine that's up here, and there's a table, and here's my rug, and they're friends over here. They're my people I have long had association with. And more than that, we've got something you don't usually see in your house after dinner, all these people. And this is the Intiman Theater in Seattle. And there are a lot of us here, some that you don't see. Technicians out in the truck, and cameramen, and TJ here in Manicam behind this lens. But what we'd like for you to do is to have a sense, insofar as our imaginations allow it, that we are having dinner with one another, and the magic is about to happen, and we hope you'll join us for that magic. Fulghum's after dinner. Another thing that brought us here is this book. All I need to know I learned in kindergarten. It's a book that got around the country because of a few things that are on the back of it. We send children to school to be civilized. We were sent for the same reason. And when we get there, we're told some pretty basic things. We're told, don't hit people. It's a bad thing to do. Share things. That's a good thing to do. If you make a mess, clean it up. If you have something that's not yours, don't take it. Put it back where you found it. Take a nap. Paint some and work some, think some, and play some every day. These are the basics of civilization. And people thought enough of that funny little litany that we all learned that they put it on their refrigerators, and next thing you know, it was all over the world in 62 countries now, 16 languages. It's rather amazing. That piece ends with something that is the theme of this evening. It says, when you go out into the world, it is best to hold hands, watch out for traffic, stick together. And that's a metaphor for friends. And I have old-time friends with me tonight to share. These are the kind of people I'd invite over after dinner, and we're going to do what we'd do if they came. Sitting on over here is Barbara Lamb, way over there, and Joe Miller's next to her, and Nancy Katz, and Lisa Teo. And they're Ranch Romance together, and they're the kind of folks who fall by my house after dinner and play music. And sitting right here beside me is Rambling Rex Jakubowski, the one-man blues band. He was standing on a corner in the Pike Street Market one day, singing in his magnificent big voice, and just had the whole crowd out there jumping. And I thought, boy, I wish I knew somebody like that. And I thought, well, you just walk up and say hello, and invite him over to dinner. And Rex came over to my house for dinner, has been coming ever since. And
I like to eat.
And you always know when he's there, there's not a lot left behind. And here's my friend Walter Wagner. He has been coming to my house for dinner for 20 years. He came, in fact, one night. He liked it so well that he never left. He moved his piano in the next week and lived with us for a couple of years. And then he bought the house, and he's still at my house after dinner, in a sense. Only he's paying the mortgage now. And back here is my friend Robert Kimball. Robert Kimball and I go back 30 years. He was my teacher in seminary, and then my friend, and then my mentor. And he's kind of responsible for all of this because out of a credo course that he taught, I wrote the basics of this book. So the circle comes round, and part of this evening is to honor him and what he's all about. That's what it means to hold hands and stick together. And then there's one more guy back here. He's Stockton Rush. Stockton's one of those people that when you're making up a list for a party, you always think, oh, we got to have Rushover, because if he's there, people laugh. And laughers are holy people. They're monks in my estimation, those lamas who have great wisdom because they see the serious and the comic and somehow make us laugh at it rather than cry about it. So he's here after dinner. Well, that's kind of the heavy stuff, get everybody introduced to, and we're going to read some things out of this book tonight, some things that you know about. First thing we're going to start with is spiders. And my friend Stockton Rush here knows some things about spiders. Give me your spider bit.
Oh. Well, you know, I hadn't really, Fulghum, I hadn't really done a lot of thinking about spiders.
Yes.
Till recently. A well-meaning but misguided friend in the East sent me a book of poetry written by my ex-wife.
Uh-huh. Miss Utah, right?
Yeah. I sure hope this doesn't go national. Anyway, it's kind of hard to know what to write to a guy like that. I've known him since college, and so I sat down and I wrote the following letter, and it said, "Dear Ned, once upon a time, there was a little girl who received for Christmas from her favorite aunt a book about spiders." New paragraph. After a great deal of thought, she wrote to her aunt and said as follows: "Dear Aunt Mary, thank you very much for the book about spiders. It's just what I always wanted, but not very much. Very sincerely yours." I haven't heard back from my friend yet.
Spiders have some motions that go with them. There's a one-handed spider motion. When you go out your door in the morning, you do this time of year. You don't know where it is, but you want to know first with your hand rather than with your face, because it can ruin your day. And then there's a two-handed spider motion, and it goes like this. And when you know what I'm doing, do what I'm doing. I'm going to start it and sing it in my head. Look at all these people. You know it. Let's do it. Teensy, teensy spider went up the water spout. Yeah. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Up came the sun and dried it from the rain. And the teensy, teensy spider went up the spout again. Good. I've been in 52 American cities in the last year, and on a number of occasions, and especially very serious occasions, for example, bankers in Orlando, I said, "Watch me," and did it, and everybody did it. It strikes me as an amazing thing, the sort of thing that I'm kind of interested in, why there should be this twist on this. Mostly when we think of spiders, we go, ah. But when you ask, do people know this song? Yeah, and when I was in Bush School talking to the kindergartners last week, do you know this song? Oh, yeah, they all knew it. We're still doing it. Why is it, you suppose, that we should continue to teach this song, this crazy song about a spider? The song says a spider goes out into the world and goes up a water spout, this strange, peculiar thing. Why would a spider want to do that? But it does it. And it gets partly up there, and then down comes the rain, says the song. Wash the spider out. But that's not the end of the story. The song goes on. Sun comes out. Life moves on. And the spider says, it doesn't say the spider says, "I'll never do that again." No, the spider checks the spout. And he makes sure he's got his hands tight, his legs tight. And he says a little spider prayer, and he checks to see whether the sun's on. And then he goes up. And the song goes on and on and on. In fact, if you've got a 3-year-old and you teach them that song, they will sing it over and over and over. But that's quite appropriate because the story goes over and over and over. It occurs to me that that song continues because it is a model for us as human beings. We like that spider. Small creatures go out in the world. We've been going out in the world for a long time. And disaster, misfortune comes in the form of saber-toothed tigers and glaciers and fires and plagues and all that terrible stuff. But we don't stop and say, no, we quit, fold this thing. We keep going on. We are bad weather creatures like the spider. It is the story of the human enterprise. And we go out, checking a little more carefully this time, watching out where are the saber-toothed tigers, but we still go out. Living things have been doing that for a long, long time. That's our story, the story of life itself. Through every kind of disaster, every kind of setback, every kind of catastrophe, we are survivors. We teach our kids about that so that they are survivors. And maybe spiders teach their kids about this too, because if you look at this from a spider's point of view, imagine you've just made the web and it looks so fine and you're all ready to catch some bug and you've showed your spider child how to do this, and all of a sudden this happens to it, something goes through. And if I was the spider and that happened to me every morning, I'd get the spider blues. And I asked Rex if he got any idea of how a spider might approach singing the blues given this condition of life. And so we got a little spider blues from Ramblin' Rex.
Yes, I'm big and hairy, baby, but mama, I sure ain't mean. Yes, I'm big and hairy, baby, woo, but mama, I sure ain't mean. Just climb up on my web, honey, you see exactly what I mean. I lost 2 legs last night when somebody came crashing through. Woo! Lost 2 legs last night, baby, when someone came crashing through. But I got 6 left, honey. Please let me wrap them around you. Woo! Hey, baby. Nice and sticky tonight, honey. Oh, yeah, Sanford. Woo! That's the spider's view of the blues, baby. Woo! Thank you. All right.
A lot of my writing is about ordinary things like that. Something I've written and talked about a great deal in my life, on one occasion or another, is about dandelions. Dandelions happen to be my most favorite flower. And if you look at them from a different point of view, like we've been looking at spiders, you might see them in a different way. I happen to like dandelions a whole lot, and my neighbors don't, and they try to poison them, and I've caught them over my yard 2 or 3 times, and from my point of view, they are flowers. And from their point of view, they are weeds, but it's the eye of the beholder here that's the important issue. Let me share with you a few words I've written about how I feel about dandelions. Let me have a little dandelion music back here.
The dandelion sleeps tonight.
The dandelion sleeps tonight. Oh, that's terrible, terrible, terrible. Huh. Dandelions cover my yard each spring with fine yellow flowers, and they don't need any help from me at all. They mind their business, and I mind mine. The young leaves make a spicy salad, and the flowers add a nice fine color to a lovely light wine. If you toast the roots and grind them and put them in the right pot, you can have a lovely tonic tea. And the leaves have iron and vitamins A and C, and they make a good laxative in case you're interested in that. The dried leaves are very special to look at and beautiful when they dry. And the bees favor dandelions, and the cooperative result is a lovely honey. Dandelions have been around a lot longer than we have. 30 million years. There are fossils, dandelion fossils, 30 million years old. Formerly classed with all sorts of fancy names, distributed all over Europe, Dandelion is the French name. The tooth of the lion. They got across Asia and across all of North America and South America as well, entirely on their own. No one ever imported dandelions to plant. Resistant to disease and bugs and heat and cold and wind and rain and human beings. If dandelions were rare and fragile, see, people would knock themselves out to pay $14.95 a pot for these things. And they'd raise them by hand in dandelion greenhouses, and they'd form dandelion societies and wear dandelion patches and stuff and sell dandelion stationery. But dandelions are everywhere, and they don't need us. And they do as they well dandelion please. So we call them weeds because of this and murder them every chance we get. Well, I say that dandelions are flowers, by God, and pretty fine flowers at that. And I am honored to have them in my yard and in my life where I want them. Besides, in addition to every good thing about them, they are magic. When the flower turns to seed, you can blow them off the stem. And if you blow just right, all those little helicopters go away and you get your wish. Magic. Or if you're a lover, you make a ring of them and put them around your loved one's hair. I defy my neighbor to show me anything as fine as dandelions. And if that wasn't enough, consider this. Dandelions are free. Nobody complains if you take all you want. You can have all you can carry away. And if them is weeds, some weeds indeed. Seeing dandelions a little bit different reminds me that human beings like to be seen in a little special light. All of us get seen as the whole ball of wax, but we want to be seen for ourselves, for people to see us like dandelions. Here's a piece about the human side of being a dandelion. I'd been left in charge of all the children in church. All the grown-ups had gone off to Sunday school. And we had this game called Giants and Wizards and Dwarfs. It was mostly a way to get a whole lot of people organized to do something really crazy and run around in circles and fall down and forget who won. And so my instructions to the children were very clear. Now you have to decide whether you are a dwarf or a giant or a wizard. And there was all this hubbub, and there was this pull at the trousers. And I looked down, and here's this little girl, and she said, "Excuse me, where did the mermaid stand?" I'm sorry, I said, there are no mermaids in this story. Oh, yes, she said, I am one. And it was very clear with the grip that she had on my trousers that she was not going away until this issue was resolved. Where do the mermaids stand, she said. And I thought, there are no mermaids. I don't know what. No, there are no mermaids, but she was still holding on to my trousers. And I thought, this is one of the heaviest questions that was ever asked. She knew that she was a mermaid, and she knew there must be a place for her, and because I seemed to know what I was doing, that I would know where that place was. Where do the mermaids stand? All those people in this world who are different, who are not like everyone else, who don't belong in pigeonholes, and who are determined not to give that up. If you can answer that question, where do the mermaids stand? You can build a world or a universe on it. What did I say? Oh, every once in a while I say the right thing. I said, the mermaids stand right here by the king of the sea. And she understood that if I wanted to be the king of the sea, that was cool with her. So we stood there, hand in hand, watching the giants and wizards roll by. It is not true that mermaids do not exist. I know at least one, personally. I have held her hand. Well, that's kind of heavy stuff. Let's shift in another direction that sort of leads from that, because mermaids lead to the story of Cinderella. And that thing I've been talking about all evening is that Cinderella thing where you want someone to find you, to see that you are special and different. And if it all works out, then you get to marry the prince if you're Cinderella. And I would like to shift in the direction of what happens after that. I want to talk about weddings a little bit. And this shift from mermaids to weddings, we're going to need some atmospheric changes from you. I once did a wonderful wedding where the musicians did not show up, and we badly needed music. Now, I know that sounds like disaster, but from my point of view, it's a wonderful opportunity to involve everyone. So I explained to all the guests that I needed music from them, that they were going to have to be the full procession, and all we had to do was the wedding march. So we did it. Give us, and you can do it to establish the mood with me. Give me the... Yes, okay. Listen and pick up as you get it. La 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 la. Weak. La 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 la. Heavy part. La 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 la. You to do it without the musicians. I want you to hear how magnificent you sound. Watch me, class. Here we go. The bride is coming, and everything depends upon you, or it's going to be a failure. So you're it. La. When we come back, and we hope you're in much of a wedding mood as we are. La, la, la. Good. Something about weddings.
You want me to be the resident cynic? I
Yes,
will this time, because there's so much good stuff going on
yes.
here. Right. I have a friend that's done weddings quite a few times. Mm-hmm. Now, to quite a few people. Not as a minister. And
yes.
He has the general remark. He said, if you're thinking of getting married, he said, I tell you what you do. Go out and buy a house you really love and give it to a woman you hate.
That's really
It's a little sick,
terrible.
but I like it.
or vice versa, right?
Or vice versa, right. Right.
Stockton fills a void,
He
don't you
does.
think?
He fills a void, yes.
I try.
In this book called It Was on Fire When I Lay Down on It, which came out this past fall, there was a story about a wedding that is sort of an archetype. Unitary minister, I've married about 1,500 couples, and I'm often asked to perform interfaith marriages. The mixed marriage is the common term. Widely differing religious backgrounds are not usually all that's involved, however. Any wedding where the bride and groom is marrying someone outside the family's notion of the edges of things is mixed, shall we say. To be asked to perform a mixed marriage is to join two people who are trying to cross a minefield without getting blown up. The classic example of the mixed marriage, on any level you want to use that word, is the wedding of a lovely young woman from Brooklyn. She had a huge family, Polish immigrant stock, and she was very Jewish. Her tall, handsome, and likewise wonderful fiancé hailed from Detroit. Likewise a huge family. Likewise immigrant stock, but Irish, and Roman Catholic. The bride's family included a rabbi and a cantor. The other team had some priests and a nun on the register. And it was bad enough that the young man and woman had come all the way out west to attend graduate school, bad enough that they might not marry someone from the old neighborhood, but to fall in love with, and even worse, to marry someone outside, someone not like us, was a shameful disaster, a familial earthquake of the first magnitude, unthinkable. But Ms. Brooklyn and Mr. Detroit were 21 years old, and they were overcome with love. And love, they were quite certain, would take care of any obstacle. So anyhow, they stepped on the mine, came to my house, called their moms, and exactly what you thought would happen. The mothers were united in their response. I won't say this as loud as it came over the phone, but it was, "You're gonna marry a what?" Followed by a lot of sobbing. And then the daddies got on, and there was this very stern line, "Come home this minute, now." Well, for a month, the mail and the phone calls flowed like a waterfall. Uncles and aunts and cousins got in the fray. The rabbi wrote a 30-page letter. The priests and the nuns prayed. The families were not coming ever to such a wedding. The families threatened blood. Soon all the Irish Catholics from Detroit were coming. They'd show those Jewish yahoos from Brooklyn what family loyalty was all about, and they'd bring Uncle Dickie, the priest, to keep the thing as godly as possible. Well, if the Catholics were coming, you knew what was going to happen next. 35 Brooklyn Jews, including grandfather rabbi, had plane tickets by Monday. And the wedding began to shape up like a grudge match between Notre Dame and Jerusalem Tech. This is called, in physics, achieving a critical mass. And I know that's a bad pun, but that's what was going to happen. Think about it, okay. Critical mass, okay. Sure enough, they all came. And then it really got complicated. See, the grandfather rabbi begged to be at least allowed to say a blessing in Hebrew at the end of the service, which was okay. But when the Irish Catholics got wind of this, nothing would do but that grandmother, who had once performed in light opera, should sing Schubert's Ave Maria before the blessing as a kind of prophylactic to the Hebrew. And then one side wanted a little incense used, and the other side wanted to have some wine and to jump up and down in the goblet, and the bride and groom just did a lot of whatever. So the great day came on Saturday evening after sundown to please the you-know-whats, and the families marched into church and sat down. Well, maybe sat down is too light a word. Dug in was more what I had in mind. For a time, I would have given 6 to 5 odds in favor of a real whole-hog Donnybrook in this thing. Instead of a ceremony, we were going to have a fight. But I keep forgetting about love. The Irish Catholics from Detroit love the groom, no less than the Polish Jews from Brooklyn love the bride. And for very good reasons. They were remarkable young people, worthy of great pride and respect, even if they didn't have a brain in their heads when it came to choosing mates. And even the most bitter, jaundiced critic of the march had a hard time ignoring how tall and handsome the groom was, or how very beautiful, enchanting was the bride. And you'd really have to be blind to miss what happened during the ceremony. When the couple said their vows, it was clear they meant every last word. And the bride began to cry and weep, and the groom took her in his arms, and he wept. And then I wept, and then everybody else wept, and we wept so much we couldn't go on. I've seen weddings that were wet before, but this was a communal bath. Even Uncle Dickie out in the chancel, he wouldn't want to come to the church where this terrible thing was going, was dabbing his eyes as he watched us, the priest. Oh, yeah. So he wept on for lack of words. And it was then, that amazing moment, that Grandma got up to sing. The great matriarch of the Irish Catholics, 78 years old. And she pulled herself together, and she did not come all this way to let her grandson down. She stood by the piano, took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and she sang. Delivered, as the rabbi said afterwards, the old lady delivered the goods. Never have I heard Ave Maria sung with more feeling, more passion. She was magnificent, not some scratchy, overdramatic sound you might expect from an aging third-rate opera singer. No, this is a grandma singing for her grandson. The last lovely note faded. We all cried. Silence held us firm. And Grandma took a breath and said, there now. Well, the Brooklyn Jews gave her a standing ovation. They go, "Ah, Grandma!" They didn't know what was to do proper at a church, but they knew music, and they knew Grandma had given it all she had, and they knew great love when they saw it. She was their kind of guy, as the rabbi said, and a standing O was called for, so they did. Hey, Grandma. The grandfather rabbi, who was the next act in this scene, was not about to be outdone. He walked with great stately dignity to stand by the bride and groom. And then, in behalf of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and every last Jew in Brooklyn, he laid a blessing on those children that will last them the rest of their lives. I mean, they were blessed, and you didn't have to understand Hebrew to know it. So, of course, as you'd hope, the Irish Catholics gave him a standing ovation right there in the church. Yay, Grandma. I mean, it turned into something beyond a wedding. And that's when the minister sighed a deep sigh of relief, knowing that despite his own cynicism, that joy, once again, and love had won the day. We were about to have a happy ending, and God, how we want happy endings in this life. More than anything else in this life we hope for, just a few happy endings. What the families had not understood until that moment, I suspect, was that they had many of the same values and traditions. Just because they were Jew and Catholic didn't mean that, even though their metaphors were different, they believed in family, and they believed in faith, and they believed in love. They believed in the same God and the capacity to celebrate those things. And the bride and groom rushed off down the aisle. Everybody else rushed out of the church for different reasons, because there was a polka band in the refectory, and the newlyweds rushed onto the floor to dance, and grandfather rabbi asked grandma singer to dance, and the crowd roared and joined them, and the party was on. Never have I seen such a reception. Never was there such eating and laughing and singing long into the night. Magnificent. It was everything you hope a reception would be. 3 days later, when my head cleared, I wondered how it had happened. And I decided that the skeptical minister had once again been wrong. The bride and groom were right. Love was more powerful than prejudice. Love won out. It doesn't always work this way, but this time. Love 21 was the score. Evil spirits zipped. When in doubt, I suspect you can trust those you love. All of them. I know there's a nice epilogue to this. A year later, I got a postcard. Close to the first anniversary of this amazing occasion, I thought, this is from the bride and groom, as these things often are. But oh no, this is from a cruise ship in the Caribbean. Not from the bride and groom at all, but from the parents of the bride and groom, who have become the greatest of friends. I was afraid you're going to blow your head up. We need a name for this. Give me a title.
Well, that's obvious, Fulghum. That's the greatest Jewish hymn of all time. That's Oy Vey Maria.
Oh. So, dancing at the end of the wedding, and if you want to dance, you go to taverns to dance, and that's where we're going. Give me some tavern music.
Well, holy smoke, land sakes alive, I never thought this could happen to me. I got stung by a sweet honey bee. What a feeling come over me. It started in my legs, crept up to my head, and flew to my heart. I was stung dead, I'm done. I got stung. You were all that I wanted and more. I've seen honeybees before. It started buzzing in my ears, buzzing in my brain. Got stung all over, but I'm feeling no pain. I'm done. I got stung.
Most of us on this stage have been to taverns a lot, not because we're heavy drinkers, but because we're heavy dancers. And almost everybody here has been in a Buffalo Tavern in Ballard at one time or another, where some of the great dynamic log music used to happen. We like to go not only to dance, but to watch the people who were there because they're so very real. One of the things I like to go and see is the geek dancers. And I didn't say Greek, I said geek dancers. Let me tell you about geek dancers. When I get down and my life is log-jammed and I need some affirmative action, I go where people dance, like the Buffalo Tavern. I don't mean joints where people go to get crocked and then wobble around on the floor to music. I mean places where people who really like to dance go to do that. I like dancers. I never met a serious dancer who wasn't a pretty fine human being. And I enjoy the never-ending pleasure of being surprised by just who the dancers are. It does me good to go to a joint and see a couple of ill-builts, kind of fat and homely and solemn and all, get up on the floor and waltz away like angels. When I see people like that on the street and I start to look down my nose at them, a better voice in my head says, they're probably dancers, Fulghum. And I feel a lot better about them and about me. Anyhow, about geek dancing. Geek is a word that describes sort of strange folks, and a lot of my students used to refer to me as an old geek, so I kind of know what that means. My favorite place, the New Melody Tavern, has traditional jazz on Sunday nights from 6:30 to 9:30. The geek band plays swing music from Chicago and New Orleans from the good old days. Most of the people who show up are over 40 blue-collar types, one beer. They got to be at work at 7:30 in the morning, not what you'd call a really rowdy crowd. Dancers is what you'd call them. And I like to look around and find the King Hill champion geek for the evening. An old guy wearing invisible house slippers and his bathrobe and balding, white hair, short, wrinkled, the kind who sort of lists to port when he walks. One, if you saw him at a bus stop, you'd think that's strictly nursing home material, but you see him here, and you know this guy is a dancer, a dancing geek. And he usually has his wife, the geekess, with him. She's a bit younger, fluffed up for dancing, and she's been fluffed up for dancing for 50 years. Check her shoes. If they are black, with a strap across the mid-heel, you know what she came for and what she's going to do. So the music cranks up. He takes her by the hand, and he sort of limps onto the floor. It's an act just to set you up. He wants to wait until the last minute to show you what he can do. And then it happens. She steps into a permanent place in his arms. And the years fall away, and once again, Cinderella and the prince move to the music in the room and the music in their hearts. It takes about 40 years to dance with someone this way. Such ease, such grace, all kinds of little moves that have been perfected without words. He dances flat-footed with an economy of motion. She responds to unseen signals to twirl out and twirl back. Their eyes meet from time to time, and you know you're seeing a pretty happy marriage out there on the floor. You have to love somebody a long time to do what they're doing. Sometimes the old geek asks another lady to dance, and someone usually asks the geekess. They make whoever they're dancing with look good. An 81-year-old geekus once asked me to dance in such a situation, and I gave her my best. She sat me down and said, "Honey, you are real good," and I lived off that for a week. I want to be, and I fully intend to be, an old geek dancer. My geekus and I, we're working on this. I realize it's a public responsibility to help everyone stay as young as long as possible. And I don't want to die in my bed or run over in the street. If I have my choice, I'd like to die some night at the end of the last dance. Some lovely night, sit down in a chair, smile, pass on. This reminds me of something I heard about the Hopi Indians. They don't think there's much difference between dancing and praying. Both are necessary, they say, for a long and happy life. The Hopis should know, I guess. They've been around for a long time, and they've been through a lot. They say that to be a useful Hopi is to be one who has a quiet heart and takes part in all the dances.
Don't think I'm complaining, I'm mighty pleased between bed, 'cause you give me just one little peck on the back of my neck. I break out in a cold, cold sweat. What if I live to be 102? I won't let nobody sting me but you. I'll be buzzing that hive every day at 5, and I'm never gonna leave your side alive. I'm done. I got some stinging babs. Hey, take one, Rex. Like a little mandolin now. Hey, take it, Walter. I got stung by a sweet honeybee. What a feeling come over me. It started in my legs, moved up in my head, through my heart, and I was stung dead. I'm done. I got stung. Here we go. Well, holy smokes. And land sakes alive, I never thought this could happen to me.
We could probably open our own tavern. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Start somewhere around Thanksgiving. You begin to notice it's getting darker. And things can get dreary, and there's all this stuff you got to get done, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all that stuff, and you can get down in the winter. I'm going to share with you some thinking about winter states of mind. Failure is something that comes up in the context of winter. You think about your own sins and sorrows and mistakes. I'll tell you about one of the great failures of all time that I know about. A man's name was John Pierpont, and he died of failure. 1866, more than 100 years ago, at age 81, he came to the end of his days as a government clerk in Washington, D.C., with a long stretch of personal defeats abrading his spirit. Things began well enough. He graduated from Yale, that other college, which his grandfather had helped found. And he chose education as his profession, thought he'd be a teacher. Some enthusiasm there, but he was a failure at school teaching. He was too easy on his students. So he turned to the legal world, thought, well, maybe he could be a lawyer, got some training, but he was a failure as a lawyer. He was too generous to his clients and too concerned about justice to take the cases that brought good fees, and so he thought, well, maybe he could run a store, so he became a dry goods merchant. But he was a failure as a businessman. He couldn't charge enough for his goods to make a profit, and he was too liberal with credit. In the meantime, he began writing poetry. And though it was published, he didn't collect enough royalties to make a living, so he was a failure as a poet. And so, having fallen this far, he decided to become a minister. In order to be a minister, he went off to Harvard Divinity School. He was ordained as a minister at Hollis Street Church in Boston. But he had a position on prohibition that wasn't okay, and he was against slavery, and that got him crosswise with the influential members of his congregation. So they forced him to resign. He was a failure as a minister. So he turned to politics. Seemed like a safe enough place he could make some difference, and he was nominated actually for the governor to be the Abolition Party of Massachusetts, but he lost. Go ahead. But this guy was undaunted. He ran for Congress under the banner of the Free Soil Party, and he lost. He was a failure as a politician, but the Civil War came along, giving many opportunities for everyone. He volunteered as a chaplain of the 22nd Regiment of the Massachusetts Volunteers. 2 weeks later, he quit, having found the task too much of a strain, and it's no wonder. He was 76 years old, and he couldn't even make it as a chaplain. Someone found him a job, an obscure job in the back offices of the Treasury Department in Washington, and he finished out the last 5 years of his life as a menial file clerk. He wasn't very good at that either. His heart was not in it. So John Pierpont died a failure. He had accomplished nothing he set out to do or be. There's a small memorial stone to him. Words in the granite read, poet, preacher, philosopher, philanthropist. Mount Auburn Cemetery, Cambridge, Massachusetts. From where we stand now, in this distance of time, one might insist that he was not, in fact, a failure. His commitments to social justice, his desire to be a loving human being, his active engagement in the great issues of his times, these are not failures. And much of what he thought of as defeat, in fact, became success. Education was reformed and legal processes were improved. Credit laws were changed, and above all, slavery was abolished once and for all. But why am I telling you this? This is a story of many people of his time. Many 19th century reformers had similar lives, similar failures, similar successes. But in one very, very important sense, John Pierpont was not a failure. Every year, come winter, somewhere around the beginning of December, we celebrate his most magnificent success. Everyone carries in their hearts and minds a long life memorial to him. Nothing big. It's a song. It's not about Jesus, and it's not about angels, and it's not about Santa Claus. Just a terribly simple song about a joy of whizzing through the cold white dark of winter's gloom in a sleigh pulled by just one horse, the company of friends, laughing, singing all the way. No more than that, and no less. Jingle bells. Old John Pierpont wrote Jingle Bells. He wrote a song that stands for the simplest joys. Imagine to write a song that now 300, 400, 500 million people, who knows, around the world know. A song about something they've never done.
You made that
Something
up.
they have to imagine. A song that every one of us, large and small, is willing to hoot out the moment the first lovely chords are struck. And the chord is struck not only in the piano, but in our spirit. That's not failure, let me tell you. That's not failure. One snowy afternoon, in deepest winter, John Pierpont penned the lines as a small gift for his family and friends and congregation. And in doing so, left behind a permanent gift of Christmas. The best kind, not the one under the tree. No, something invisible, something invincible, one of joy. Unspeakable joy. Something you can only sing about. Give me some jingle bells. Wherever you are, John Pierpont, thanks a lot. Winter. This is a story about one winter when I was really down. Everybody gets those holes in the winter. I'd kind of had it up to here with the coming of Christmas and the whole hoo-ha, and I was dug in way in the back lot of my life. Rain, wind, cold, winter's gloom. I had a things to do list that was long and growing like an unrestrained mold. My temper was short, and the newspapers, my bioindex was negative. The horoscope recommended caution in all things. And the Sunday newspaper had only stuff about dollars and death and destruction, like a litany. Tidings of comfort and joy, fa la la, right? This holy hour of Lord's Day bliss was jarred by a pounding at the door. You have one of those now what kind of things going in your mind. So I opened it, resigned to accept whatever bad news was there. And I'm nonplussed because what's standing there on my doorstep in this miserable afternoon is a very small person in a cheap Santa Claus mask carrying a large paper bag, and he shouts at me, "Trick or treat!" This is December. Trick or treat, he shouts. I'm tongue-tied. I stare at him. I don't know what to do with this. He shakes his bag at me. Trick or treat! So I take out my wallet and drop $1 in his bag, and the mask goes up, and it's this Asian kid with this lovely grin taking up most of his face. "Want to hear some carols?" he says. Halloween carols? Come on. I know this kid. He belongs to a family settled into the neighborhood by Quakers last year. Boat people, Vietnamese, refugees. He got into the spirit at Halloween. He was here with his brothers and sisters, and we filled their bags, and I guess he thought this was a good idea. His name is Hong Duck. He's maybe 8. It's funny, at Halloween, he looked like a wise man. He had a bathrobe on and a dish towel wrapped around his head. Want to hear some caroling? He hoots again. I nod. I suddenly have this vision of maybe 15 urchins out there in the bushes, and they're going to jump out and sing. So I say to him, sure, bring on the choir. Where's your choir? I'm it, says he. And he launches forth with an up-tempo chorus of jingle bells at full lung power. And this followed by an equally enthusiastic rendering of what I swear sounded like Hark the Herry Angels Sing. And finally, a soft voice, reverential singing of Silent Night. Head back, eyes closed. From the bottom of his heart, he poured out the last strains of Sleep in Heavenly Peace. Wet-eyed, dumbstruck by his performance, I pulled a $5 bill out of my wallet and dropped that into the paper bag, and in return, he produced from his pocket half a candy cane. Flashed his $10 grin, turned and ran from the porch, shouting over his shoulder, God bless you, and trick or treat, and was gone. Hong Duck, the one-man Christmas choir, delivering the goods door to door. I confess that I am usually confused in winter about this Christmas thing that comes roaring down at us every year. It never has made a lot of sense to me. It's a little unreal. Ever since I got the word about Santa Claus, I've been a closet cynic at heart. Singing about riding in a one-horse sleigh is ludicrous. I've never seen one. I've never ridden in one. I've never roasted a chestnut by an open fire. I wouldn't know how to if I had to. And I hear that chestnuts are no big deal anyhow. I'm very suspicious of wandering wise men, and shepherds who spend their lives hanging around with sheep are a little strange. I have never seen an angel, and my experience with virgins is very limited. I'm not even very interested in the appearance of a newborn king. I'd just as soon settle for some other president, but that's another story. And babies and reindeer stink. I have been around both of them. And I'm told by people who've been there that the little town of Bethlehem, in fact, is a real pit. According to the tour guides, it ain't much to see. And to sing about these things, which is what we try to do every time this time of year come around. Sing about things that I've never wanted, I've never done. Dreaming of a white Christmas, which I've never seen. Christmas is unreal, and it's part of why I get down in the winter sometimes. I'm too old to believe in it. I'm too young to give up on it. I'm too cynical to get into it, and too needy to stay out of it. Trick or treat. Ah, perfect. I shut the door. I come nearly to hysteria. Laughter, tears, that funny feeling when you get that, you know, whether you want it or not, once again, Christmas has come to you. Right down the chimney of your midwinter hovel comes Saint Hong Duck. He is confused about the details, like me, but he is very clear about the spirit of the occasion. For him, it's one more strange American excuse to let go and celebrate, to throw yourself into some kind of holiday with all you have. Where's your choir? I said. I'm it, he says. Where's Christmas? I ask myself. Guess I'm it, comes the echo. Head back, eyes closed, voice raised in whatever song I can muster the courage to sing. I'm it. God, it is said, once sent a child upon a starry night that the world might know hope and joy. I'm not quite sure I believe that. I'm not quite sure I believe in all the baggage heaped upon that story during 2,000 years, but I am sure of something. I believe Hong duck. I believe in the power of the one-man Christmas choir shouting out of the darkness of winter, trick or treat, door to door. I don't know who or what's in him, but I know that I am tricked through the whimsical mischief of fate into joining the choir that sings of joy and hope. Through a child, I have been treated to Christmas. That's heavy stuff. I could use a little lightening up. Stockton, tell me that story again about the Rudolph
About the football
Red-Nosed.
player?
Yeah, give me the Rudolph story.
That's Walter's favorite story. About the football player that couldn't pass bonehead English. You remember that? Oh, no. Anyway, and the coach was very upset because if he didn't pass it, he wasn't going to be able to play. And so he took him to the professor, who was also a football fan, and he gave him a simple test. He said, now, look, you answer this test, you got a half an hour, you pass it, you can play for the rest of the season. So Harry says, okay, I'm ready. You know, lay it on me, man. So he said, well, the question's very simple. He said, how many D's in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? You got a half an hour, and I'll be back. So he worked on it, and he came back in half an hour. He says, all right, Harry, time's up. How many D's in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? He said, 132. He said, 132? How did you get that? He said, it wasn't easy, you know. I got to count. It's dee-dee, 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 dee-dee. Heavy.
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 See, that's the twist of humor. Out of darkness and winter's gloom, we keep finding this ability to laugh or to make light of. That reminds me of an encounter I had with a lady some years ago, called me up on the phone. It was near Christmas time. She said, I'm really depressed. Do you ever get depressed? I said, depressed? I get depressions that take stepladders to get out of. And she said, so what do you do? I said, well, my solace is not religion or yoga or rum or even deep sleep. It's Beethoven, as in Ludwig van. He's my ace in the hole. I put his symphony on, and I put the stereo phones down real tight, and I lie down on the floor first, and then the music comes on. And I think about old Mr. B while that music's coming on. He was pretty depressed. He was pretty unhappy. He moved around from place to place, trying to find the right place, but never did. His was a lousy love life. A rotten nephew worried him deeply. Mr. B wanted to be a virtuoso pianist, but he couldn't because he began to go deaf. It's usually bad news for pianists. By 1818, when he was 48, he was stone cold deaf, which makes it all the more amazing, I think to myself, as I'm lying there on the floor, that he finished that magnificent Ninth Symphony 5 years later. Beethoven never heard it. Beethoven only thought it. So I lie there with my earphones on, wondering if it could have ever felt to Beethoven like it feels to me, like it sounds in my head. The crescendo rises and my sternum starts to vibrate, and by the time that final kettle drum with all those big F's come, I'm on my feet. I can't lie there on the floor. You have to get up with that kind of music. And I'm standing there, and the great Fulghum is waving his arms as the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and the Philadelphia Symphony are roaring at top, and I'm leading that and playing the kettle drum, and you have this sense of, man alive, God and all his angels, and hoorah. It's pretty hard to be depressed when you hear that music, to know that out of that darkness and out of that despair came that. He had it in him. You know it. You know that final, lovely phrase. Hum it with me. Dee, 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 la, 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 give you some words. Listen to the words. You'll get them just like this. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-E-I-O. On that farm he had a cow, E-I-E-I-E. Moo-moo over here, moo-moo here and moo-moo there and moo-moo-moo-moo there. Finally finished. Old MacDonald had a farm, I never can resist all that beauty and truth. I just can't imagine sitting there in my own rut, wringing my hands and feeling sorry for myself in the face of that music. Throwing those silly words in helps with the sense of foolishness and joy. I think it wipes out spiritual rot, and I think it also cures colds. So what's all this noise about winter and rain and bills and taxes, I say to me? Who needs this talk about failure and confusion and frustration? What's all this noise about life and people being no damned good? In the middle of oatmeal days, I find within Beethoven's music an irresistible affirmation. Out of his darkness came light. In the midst of his winter came the invincible sun that is within us all. So things are coming to an end, and in this book, it was on fire when I lay down it. I commented to the ending of things, and I wrote in these words that apply to tonight as well as the end of the book. Pretty soon now, I'm going to get into my going to bed ritual. It's not unlike yours will be, I suppose. Walking through the house, I will turn off the lights, check the latches on the door one more time, turn down the heat, stop by and check the refrigerator one last time to see if anything like chocolate ice cream has appeared there since 9 o'clock. And then, by automatic pilot in the dark, I will find my way up the stairs and into bed next to my sleeping wife. There's always a silent laugh at this moment. She wears a black eye shade, so it's kind of like getting into the sack with the Lone Ranger. But I always really liked the Lone Ranger, and I always say to myself, the faithful Indian Tonto is here. I don't say it out loud anymore, no one laughs, but I think it's my own dumb joke, and I go to bed amused, which is not such a bad way to go to bed, actually, even if it's on the note of a silly joke. Next, I'll do what you probably do. I get my pillows shoved around just the way I like them, and I set the alarm, and then I take a breath and lie back into that state of being between waking and sleeping. My daytime mind wants to work on the problems of the day, but I think to myself, no, I've done as well as I could do. This day was full, and tomorrow's work will just have to wait. In the meantime, what I need is sleep. Everyone else is asleep, why not me? And if I sleep well, the tasks of another day will take care of themselves. Sleep, Fulghum, sleep, say I, and I do. Now, I know this is not exactly a bedtime prayer in the traditional sense, but it supposes peace through the night, supposes hope for a productive life the next day, and that's prayer enough, I suppose. This particular night, I will go to bed with the laughter in my mind. Sometimes think that maybe I should take the laughter out of my writing. Serious writing isn't supposed to have humor in it, so I think maybe we'll trim out the funny parts, but I also think not, and here's why. To get through this sweet life and see it realistically, you have to deal with a very large problem. There is a dark, evil, hopeless side to life that includes suffering and death and ultimately oblivion. Someday our Earth is going to fall into the sun. That kind of thinking nothing is really important. Nothing counts. And on the other side, the best of our humanity finds us determined to make life as meaningful now as possible. Now. To defy our fate, like old Beethoven. Everything matters when you think that way. Everything. And it's terribly easy to become immobilized between those two points of view, to see them both so clearly that one cannot decide what to do or to be. And laughter gives me the forward motion at such intersections. We are the only creatures that both laugh and weep, you know. I think it's because we are the only creatures that see the difference between the way things are and the amazing way they might become. Tears bring relief, and the laughter gets us up and on. Some years ago, I came across a phrase in Greek, asbestos hielos, unquenchable laughter. I traced it to Homer's Iliad, where it was used to describe the laughter of the gods. And that's my kind of laughter. And you know, he who laughs, lasts. Good night, and sleep loose.